Well, we've got the Dr. Robert from Wuhan back on our channels just for the fact that there's so many people out there that are non-believers. I've heard that's not a doctor, looks like a gatekeeper. I'm not even sure what a gatekeeper is. So we thought, well, rather than leave it sort of hanging out there, we'd ask the doctor back onto the shows, both shows again, and see if we can't iron out some of the rumors or the misgivings that people are thinking out there. One of the things I look at everything that China has done over the last couple of months, since December 8th, I think, is when everything sort of broke with the cluster of pneumonia cases that popped up in Wuhan. And, you know, there was that lag in China of about 2 to 3 weeks where they really didn't know what they were dealing with. And then once they found out what they were dealing with, they started quarantining areas of China and dealing with it in a very serious way. Now you see the same thing happening in places like Iran, South Korea, Japan, the United States, and I think there's 40 some other countries around the world where they have the coronavirus, but they don't quarantine. There's no air carriers stopping people going and coming from those countries. Do you think they're making a mistake by not dealing with it the same way as China did?
Well, it's not necessarily be a mistake for not quarantine people, because we have different conditions. We have different situations here in China. We have such a condensed population, and we have such a industrialized area in Wuhan, because Wuhan is in such a critical geological place of China, in China, and very industrialized right in the central. Especially when the outbreak happened, it was in the biggest festival of China history, of China culture. So everybody is preparing to go home, have a huge party, or to visit their relatives at home. So it was happens in such a critical time. If we don't do the quarantine, we don't do the lockdown of the city, it's going to be a huge, I mean, a chain. It's a chain react of spreading, because that week, that 7 days is going to be the most how to say busy time for every people from Wuhan. Yeah.
I'm just going to chirp in on that, just so the viewers understand what Robert's talking about. This quarantine basically happened, can you imagine this, on New Year's Eve. And we are talking about the largest human migration of people on the planet that happens every time, at this year for the Chinese, during the Chinese New Year. This is the world's largest migration. Estimates from somewhere from either 500 to 7 or 800 million people get on planes, trains, automobiles, and boats.
That and they go everywhere.
They exactly. Go everywhere.
So the idea that you get a country like Iran, they're not the super technological country like a place like China is, or the United States, Canada, Great Britain, Japan. And now this virus is, as they say, in every one of their provinces. And they actually even had a big government official, one of the officials that deals with high government there, pass away from this virus. They have no quarantines in place. They have what do you tell these people? What do you tell this country? Are they doing something wrong? Or do you? I guess let me rephrase this, Robert. Do you get all of this information on your news in China about Iran, Japan, South Korea? Are you privy to all this information in China?
Well, Chinese media, maybe it's not as persuasive as the American media is, but we do get every bit of real information. What do you get? We will get it. About Iran, about the vice minister of the public health, or I think yesterday, they got another minister who had infected also the situation in Korea and the situation in Japan, in Italy, and also it's getting very serious. I think the real-time number would be 12,000 something, 12,900 something confirmed cases, right? So you know what about this Iran situation? I think uh, as soon as the public have realized how serious it is, as soon as the country, because every country they have a certain capacity of manufacturing the things they need, right? But this manufacturing capacity may not necessarily come to work at the right time, as soon as they need it. It needs some lagging time. It needs like 2, 3 weeks, sometimes even 1 month. But as you, as soon as you can, stabilize the population, just make sure there's no large scale migration, large scale like traveling, then you'll be fine within that 1 month. The number will still grow up, will still rising, but it doesn't, rising like crazily, like uh, unlogically. So they're gonna still gradually rising. But as soon as your system, your medical system, uh, like medical staff or medical supply or public education, as soon as everything is back on track, I don't think it's going to be is it going to be a problem? Because you get, I mean, Chinese are the same people. We're the same. We have the same. How do you say, humanity, and our manufacturing capacity is not so better than any other country. So if we can deal with it, you guys can deal with it. People from Iran, Italy, they can deal with it. It's not going to be a big problem.
Okay, well, when this sort of hit and everybody knew what was going on in China, Xi Jinping actually went on the news and said, "We've got a problem, guys. This is serious. Let's deal with it." Then you get the United States where it's starting, and an epidemic like this always starts with one person and spiders out. And their supreme leader, President Trump, said, "Don't worry about it. It's not a big thing. We can handle it." Uh, do you think he's giving the wrong idea to the people of the United States that this is no big deal?
Well, I think it is a big deal. That's for sure. I mean, it is a big deal. It's not. It's just. I don't think through watching the news of BBC or CNN or New York Times, I didn't see any professional. I will say the president, the vice president. I see, the public image like doing all the propaganda, but I didn't see any real doctor.
Their health minister, they gagged their health minister. The top doctor in the United States came out and said, this could be a problem, and he was gagged by the White House. You can't control the masses in the Western country because they look at the world differently. In China, when the government says, well, you've got to do this, because the people in China trust the government, they'll do what the government says. But if you do it in Canada, well, 50% of the people trust the government and 50% of the people don't trust the government. So you've always got that 50% that will say, no, I'm not going to do that. And the States, in Norway, in Great Britain, in Australia, in France, all of these countries are basically the same. Where in China, you've got one government, and that's the only government that the people know, and they actually do trust. Maybe not 100%, because I've come across people in China that don't.
Actually, where I got some saying, Kurt, I gotta cut you off.
Go ahead.
Because every piece of newspaper, every piece of information I got from internet, especially from the mainstream media of the United States, whenever they mention about China, about Chinese government, they always say the government controls the people, controls everything. The communism controls everything. The funny thing is that nobody feels controlled here. It's not that type of a relationship you feel when you are a Chinese here. It's not that type of mutual relationship. Here we feel it's like someone is really there look after you. Someone is willing to do the managing work of the country. And this guy did a good job, very good job of managing the country. Especially this guy or this group of guys, they don't have to please a group of people. They don't have to be, you know, uh, to please some like big group. Only thing they have to do is to improve people's living standard. And they did this brilliant job. They improved the living style, living standard, and they lift so much person out of poverty during the past several decades. And now people are more and more people, especially the young guys, because young guys are thought to be, like rebellions, like always had something to say about the government. Now the young guys are turning to the biggest group of patriotic person. And through this outbreak, there's a funny phenomenon I gotta tell you that the other day I was talking to my cousin who works in New York City as a nurse. So she moved to there about I think 10 years ago. She was telling me that they are actually the public health officers are actually encouraging people to not wear a mouth mask if you don't have a symptom. He said because that will create panic for the common for the common population, common people. And I never understand how a public health officer would say such thing. Here in China, we don't do that. If you need to cover your mouth, if you need to wear a mouth mask, you've got to wear mouth mask. We don't hear about the rumor. We're not hear about the rumor because you know what? Whenever there's a false information, a rumor spreading on the internet, we just cut it off. We will say the West media will immediately say this censorship. They are censoring this, censoring that. They want sometimes at the critical time, at this time, at the critical crisis like this, it's better to cut off all the false rumor, to spread all the panic, bad things, terror. I feel very good about it.
But we'll put this, what you say on YouTube, and they'll say, "Oh, there's somebody there making him say that."
Yes.
Because it's.
What do you mean? There's something there? Somebody there?
Right. Yeah. Well. You see, Robert, that's just it. It's like that. And to get back to what you're saying about the communist government and the people believing in their government, and the Western government is different than the Chinese government. But you see, I don't think that if the Chinese government didn't have the support of the 1.4 billion people behind them, they wouldn't be the government. Because if to try to control 1.4 billion people, if they weren't happy with their government, would be impossible. Simple.
Yeah.
That it would be impossible. So obviously, the Chinese people are okay with the government that's running their country at this time, and that's the bottom line.
Yes, exactly. You know what I mean? When you hearing those Western mainstream media saying that the communism are covering, controlling, like censoring this and that,
Yeah.
it's obviously they didn't look into our history because we have 3,000 history of ruling. I mean of the ruling society. Every dynasty, for every stage of history, there's always a bad king. You know what happened to the bad king? As long as there's a bad king, people will throw it out. You never see a bad king be there for 500 years or even 100 years. You see a bad king for 5 years, then people will throw them out.
Okay, I've got one question.
Yes.
If the Chinese dynasty has been around for 3, 4, 5,000 years, how come baijiu tastes so bad?
Hey, I don't drink baijiu neither. You know what?
Cute question, Kurt. Cute question. Do the viewers even know what baijiu is?
I tell you,
it's rice. It's like moonshine. They make moonshine. I could make as good a moonshine as that when I was 16 years old out of potatoes, bran, and sugar and yeast and a little still. But
I do
I,
have some
I,
insight about
I
the baijiu, although because you know what, baijiu is very strong, but it's good for the northern part of China, which is cold, right? You know, in the southern part of China, people do not always drinking baijiu. They drink something more mild, like beer, like something like huangjiu. Uh, have you
Hangzhou,
ever heard of
wine.
the yellow, yeah, huangjiu, which is something like whiskey, something like whiskey, much mild. Because you know why they need such a strong baijiu? Because in the northern part of China, it's very cold, and that strong alcohol can keep them warm, especially
Well,
in the old times. Yeah, especially in
Hey,
the
my
old
on
times.
my
um,
friends in Guangxi province, we drink baijiu. And when we put up this last video here about what 2 weeks ago,
yeah, it created
uh,
a storm. It
every,
created a storm.
everybody that watched the video that was negative towards China said, "Oh, well, the I hit my mic silence. I don't know how I did that."
Go ahead.
They said, "Well, obviously, this guy is an actor from Hollywood." Well, seriously, we got that. Uh, he's a gatekeeper. It's somebody you found on the street that could speak English. It's not true. How can he be a doctor? He doesn't know Fahrenheit from Celsius. All of these things. And you got to understand that this is the way people think. So what we did is Dr. Robert actually went into the hospital and made videos about it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to play some videos, and Dr. Robert is going to explain what these videos are in a hospital in Wuhan. Get
And I
out of
think
here! I know. So
it's unreal. Huh?
let's go back to these videos and let it roll, Alex.
Yeah, okay, so I'm just going to pull these up and thank.
Okay.
Hold on for
Yes,
one second. I have
tell me.
one sentence to add. One thing to add before you plan that. I want to say clear something up because uh, why I promise you to do this interview is not because I want some intellect exposure. I want some uh, fame or anything. I don't need this, but all I'm saying is I love what you have been putting on the YouTube, Kirk and Alex.
Thank you.
Alex, you put very, very charming tape about Chongqing, where I'm from, my hometown. And Kirk has been very good friend of Chinese culture. That I can tell. I like that. So I like you guys. So I like to show you the truth about my hospital, how we work, what is the real situation, what is the real, I mean, case in Wuhan. So that I have to put it to clear things up. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, yeah, it's rolling. Okay, you can stop here.
Sure.
See, you can see some banner there on board. That's the local people who manage this hotel. You can see, but it's actually
Okay.
not a training center for the fast train personnel. It's usually so originally this is a school, so training center, train the fast train staff here in Wuhan. So now we're staying in their dormitory or the building where the teacher stays. Yeah, that's the hall, and where they put food or uh, like I don't know, rice or dishes in the container.
Mm-hmm.
So when we get off work, we can always pick up uh, a few types of food from the container, and you got snacks, fruits. There you got yogurt and milk and stuff like that. So you can pick up anytime. Yeah, go out here from the store. That's where we get on the bus every morning. So the bus will come from this direction. So later I got you a video of me getting on the bus, and you can see the view from the bus. So yeah, this is a pretty huge campus. That's the main teaching hall or teaching building where
Okay.
they normally the students are taking classes there of the training center. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, this is another something like also a thank you, Nitter, on the board to say appreciation of the the doctors from outside of Wuhan come to help here. So the local people, they're very grateful. I mean, it's good to see. Normally you don't get this feeling when you are traveling to another city. I'm a very skeptical person usually. Normally I'm very skeptical. So whenever I go to a new place, I always pick on stuff like it's untidy or they rudeness or they mess degraded. But this time I get a feel that when something major, something like so this crisis happened, everybody they just forget about their own stuff. They come together. They become so selfishness.
Mm.
Because I mean they are willing to sacrifice their own interest, their own profit, and they really are making such a big effort to to help the country, to help the society.
So what you're saying, Robert, is the people that came into Wuhan from outside of the area came in to help, and the people that are in the area appreciate it.
Yes, big time. They really appreciate. I mean, the people I talked to in this hotel, in this training center, I mean, they're really. I mean, they got this feeling that this whole thing will be controlled. They have so much strong confidence just because, our country can actually move so much personnel in so short time. Remember, we got like 50,000 doctors and nurses come to here within 2 to 3 weeks with full equipped like supplies. We bring everything by ourselves from the cargo plane. Everything, even some of the mask, the personal equipment, protective equipment, even for the medication, we brought it on the plane here. So you imagine that's such a large scale movement. So they are very confident. They are when they are saying us coming.
50,000 health workers came to
Yes,
Wuhan. Whoa,
in 3 weeks, and
in 3 weeks.
fully equipped, everything. We bring everything. I remember I told you that the new hospital we took in, right? We spent
Yeah.
1 week to turn it from a framework, from a construction field into a fully equipped hospital. That's what we did in 1 week. I'm really proud of it.
Amazing what the Chinese can actually do in a short time period.
Yeah, man, you have to do that. I mean, through doing this, you get you for me, me through doing this, I feel like I was educated, because you see, when things like this large scale happen, people can really change into such a, how do you say that? I mean, you kind of they forgot their original. I mean, their original interest or their profit or whatever they used to be. They're not like that. They become such a nice group. They can stick together, do things. Everybody is willing to sacrifice, is willing to give up more effort. That I really, really like it.
Well, I can tell you this right now that the country I come from, Canada, in 3 weeks couldn't even make a decision to send people, that number of people, to a certain province in Canada if there was a problem, because they would be too busy arguing about what they should do than what they will do. It's amazing to see this in China, and because I've spent so much in China, so much time in China, I know that's the way that they are, and that's the way that they deal with it. But the rest of the world doesn't see that. And what you're saying, I believe 100% because I've been there. I've seen the way that the Chinese people are. But to try to convince the rest of the world that China's like that is difficult. I'm telling you, it's just about impossible because they've been told.
I gave that up like a few years ago. I gave that up a few years ago. I've stopped trying to tell the world how China really is, because you know what? We cannot persuade because Chinese are not good at persuade people. We're not good at persuading people. You see, right? Everybody, I mean, the communism in Soviet Union has broke up like 30 years ago, right?
Yeah.
It's if we're good at persuading, we should already have made the world knowing that communist is not a bad thing because we did such a great job turning this country into a beautiful place, right? But still, we have facing a such falsely information population, the whole West. I mean, their mainstream media have never stopped putting false information. It's like something like I tell you that lately I read a newspaper from BBC, and it's not something I feel happy about it. So I tried to search in BBC to search some good news about China. So I searched China. I put China in the search engine in the BBC. So I found 18 news during the past 5 months or so. I didn't find one piece of positive information about China. The first thing I discovered is something like this. A guy, a Britain company, has been shut down by Chinese government because he is trying to sell a certain video game in China. This video game is about in this video game, it encouraged people to spread a certain kind of virus named this coronavirus. If you can spread the virus as much as possible, infect as much people as possible, you win the game. Imagine if a Chinese people trying to sell such a video game in the United States when they're having such a crisis, how would their people react? How would their government react? So when we are doing this, this is a bad thing. This is democracy. So that news are describing Chinese government as some totalitarian who can shut up, or private entrepreneur, like free, like lawyers, some place. But imagine you're a real person. Imagine your country are saying the same person doing this to in your. I mean, that's the most critical crisis you're having, right? I don't know if you can feel my feelings about this.
Your frustration.
But I'm okay because I have already
Robert,
gave up.
You have to understand that, and I've been around China long enough to understand that China isn't a communist country. It's got communism, it's got capitalism, it's got socialism. It's different than any other country in the world because it's got so many different angles that it works from, and that's what makes China such a strong place. And what they do have is they've got country pride, hardworking, ethical people. They've got history. They've got so many different things. So you can't just say that China is a communist country, but if you do say it's communist, then the people on the other side, all those Democrats or Republicans will say, well, yeah, that's red China. And you see, it's stowed into them since the 1940s and 50s and 60s that communism is bad, but they haven't understood that China has passed through the idea of communism when 1978 hit and they started opening up Guangdong province to basically capitalism, and that sort of took over China for the next 20 or 30 years. Sure, they've kept their way of government, but it's not the same as the Soviet Union used to be. It's evolved into a better model of country because China is strong, wealthy, smart, intellectual, and the Soviet Union stayed in that really hardcore communist movement where it just didn't work, obviously, because it all fell apart. There's a big difference there. That's what I have to say about that.
Exactly. Yeah, that was the bus we took to the hospital. So basically, it was about 1 hour riding, bus riding from where we stay to the hospital. So we stayed in the Hongshan district of Wuhan, and then we take the bus across the Yangtze River towards Hanyang district, and Hanyang
Okay.
district is where hospital is. Yeah, this is the bus. You can see it's quite empty because
Oh,
schedule different shift. So for every
okay.
shift, it will be 10 people also on the bus. So yeah, it's a long ride. Yeah, that's how the street look. I mean, it's a very broad road, but because of the quarantine, there are very few cars you can see. Normally, this is a very crowded road.
Robert, one of the things, do you see more people on the street now than you did, say, 2 weeks ago, or is it the same?
It's the same because you know what, you know how the Chinese government work. Because if they announce a policy, then it is a strict policy. It doesn't mean that you can get 10 people on the street and tomorrow 20 people and the day after tomorrow 30 people. It doesn't work like that. So if they say you stay home, and everybody is willing to stay home, they don't want to go against the government. They don't want to go against the public health officers. So now the public office doesn't say the quarantine is over, so people stay home. But if they are preparing to let people out to work, they will tell this very detailed schedule and procedure. Often they have a very detailed procedure, like which district can go which kind of road, which factory can open, and how much people should be working. Consider your size, consider your indoor space.
You're talking about like there's no people on the streets in Wuhan, and government restrictions, and people take it seriously. But I know in places like Nanning, Guangxi province right now, all my friends are back out on the street. They're all back to work. The shops are open, the restaurants are open, and maybe the schools aren't back yet. But
No, it's not.
everything is sort of going back to normal in Nanning, Guangxi province, and Nanning is the capital city of Guangxi province, 7 million people. Um, what is
I quite believe so because Wuhan is in the epicenter. It's right in the center of this outbreak. So here it's more the government is doing things very cautiously. Because one step wrong, it it's probably gonna means the outbreak come back a little bit. Yeah, that's the Yingwuzhou a bridge of the across the Yangtze River, Yingwuzhou Bridge,
Okay.
a very big bridge across Yangtze River. So on the southern side of the bridge is Hongshan district. On the northern side of the bridge is Hanyang district. That's where my hospital is.
why would they house you an hour away from the hospital? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Exactly. I want to explain it to you why we are living like 1 hour away from where we work. Because if you got 50,000 person in the town, and you have to deliver them with bus because this is a special bus, bus route. You're not stopping on the way to the hospital, so it's a special route you're designing, right? And this
Okay.
becomes such a heavy burden for the local bus company. The bus company, they just don't have that much because if a 10% take a bus every 2 hours from
Yeah.
one place to another place, imagine how much bus they need for 50,000 person. The route is special. It's not normally if you take a bus normal time, it
So what
stops every 10 minutes, right? But here the bus doesn't stop from. They take you from the training center, direct to the hospital. So yeah.
These aren't just local buses. These are all special buses, and only you and the nurses, the doctors and the nurses and the medical professionals in Wuhan are on these buses. Nobody
Yes,
else.
yes, exactly. The local people, they are staying home. They are staying home. except for who has a certain job that have to work for this coronavirus. Except for that, all the other people they stay home, and but they do get a chance to get out, but they have to get a special permit from the community, not the government, because every community they have a front gate, right? They have some managing people because they don't let people roaming around on the street at such a crisis. This
Okay.
is the good we get in. This is only for the doctors and nurses because you want to separate the patients and the doctors, through some kind of separation, right? And you can see, and there I make a right turn and walk straight forward to or 200 meters. That's my building where I work.
Okay.
That's the elevator towards my department, and that's the door for doctors section. So if you enter this door, and you gotta wash hands, wear this two cover, two cover. Yeah, that's the mouse mask. But usually we wear mouse mask before we get on the bus. So which means we already have mouse mask wearing. So that's the thing you wear on your shoes, right? And then wash your hands here. This is the doctor's office. So when you are not working in the patient section, that's where we do um, you know the prescription and all the medical history registration. And this is the room we dress in the personal protective suit. It's a whole lot of like 15 procedures you have to do. Um, It has every steps the sketch on the wall, and it has all the things you need to put on, the goggles and gloves and the suits, and also the hat and also this face shield. They had a face shield to um yeah. That's
How
we
how
have.
long how long was the training, Robert? When you got to Wuhan, how long was the training so you knew how to deal with all of this stuff?
It was 2 weeks training. I think right after Spring Festival, so we were recruited. We were called upon, and then we started the training. So after 2 weeks training, we came here.
Robert, with your coworkers and yourself, have you had any coworkers that have gotten sick from the coronavirus?
No, no. This is exactly something I want to tell you about. This medical staff getting infected. This issue. Because now we're getting some false information of the foreign media, like mainstream media, saying that a lot of doctors, a lot of medical staff getting infected. It's not true, because all the case in the newspaper, or I actually know the person who get infected, they're from before the Spring Festival. At that time, the government or even the the medical field, they didn't realize it's a outbreak. So everybody is wearing just mouth mask and gloves, go to work and directly handle the patients. So I think it's around 10 to 15 cases of medical staff infection. That was all of them was before Spring Festival. And after Spring Festival, there's absolutely not even one case of medical staff infection. Because after that, everybody was alarmed, and we got enough supply, enough equipment for the doctors and nurses to wear. And you remember I told you there's 50,000 person was sending to Wuhan after Spring Festival, and until now there's zero case of medical staff infection until now. Remember.
Can we do this again in about 2 weeks, Robert, and just get another upgrade and see what's going
Please.
on in Wuhan?
Please.
Anytime, anytime. But
Anytime.
I just had one sentence adding before we
Please.
ending this. The purpose for me to do this is not because of the exposure. I am. I'm just how do you see? I'm touched by all the news I read from the outside, foreign mainstream media, I feel like obligated to tell the world what is the real situation here in Wuhan. I just want to tell the people it's not how CNN describe it. It's not how BBC or New York Times describe it. Here we actually have real Chinese people dealing with the real deal, the problem. There's
You,
nothing like they describe it.
And
Gweilo?
Gweilo 60.
Thank you.
Thanks,
right.
Robert.
Thank you.
You're the
Thank you.
man.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.